Joy Taylor is indeed a friend of the channel, and Joy Taylor is also not a family woman, or at least
Oh.
she's not one for having a family of her own. So
Mm.
now, Joy Taylor hasn't been shy about this. She doesn't want to have any children. That's not for her. But she enjoys living vicariously through the children of her siblings and stuff like that. But in terms of her herself, she's not interested in having kids. Furthermore, she also thinks the idea of having children to preserve legacy is a silly concept. So this was a conversation that went kind of viral because you'll hear a lot of people talking about wanting to have children so that they can pass on a legacy or to leave a legacy. And Joy Taylor thinks that this is silly. She thinks it's dumb. So this says Joy Taylor argues that procreating to carry on legacy is silly. Joy Taylor has opened up about the future she sees for herself, and it doesn't involve her having kids. In a recent episode of her podcast, Too Personal Show, Taylor and her guest Kendra G discussed the concept of building a legacy by having children. While the sports commentator confessed that she does love children, she said she doesn't want to have them herself. So I'm going to read past the quotes because I'm going to play the video. Earlier this year, the former Fox Sports host sat down with Paul Pierce and Azar Farideh on the Truth After Dark podcast, where she discussed being open to dating elderly men. If you see me pull up with a 70-year-old man, don't ask any effing questions. He's got a plane. I'm doing this for all of us. So there's the streets in Joy Taylor speaking out.
Wow.
So here's her talking with this woman. What's her name again? Kendra G.
Yeah, Kendra G.
So here's Joy Taylor. It's talking with Kendra G, and her espousing on her belief that having children to preserve legacy is a silly idea.
What I'm saying is there are men who will be like, I want to have children, but don't talk about the wife, marriage, family part.
Oh,
just the like, I need to have kids to carry on my legacy.
Yeah. Well, Nick Cannon is the perfect example of that. He talked about how he had so many kids because what he was going through. So we only use celebrities because everybody knows what we're talking about when we say
but there's plenty of people that do this.
Right, there's plenty of people like that. So there's a lot of men, whether we agree with it or not, that is important to them. Like they want to procreate. They want to have little John and little Kenny and little Tommy. That's very important to them. And obviously it's not that important to Joy.
No, I just don't think that you're starting a legacy. I think you're making humans.
Okay.
There's like a very big difference.
Okay, just for clarity, what would be an example of starting a legacy?
I think legacy is very silly. Like I think the whole concept is silly because I don't think that we as humans have this incredibly elevated God-like mentality of ourselves that we are just going to be remembered for generations and our power is going to get passed on from so on to so forth. And, 5 generations from now, they're going to be talking about, Grandma Joy. They're not going to be talking about you. They don't care.
That's not true.
They're not going to do it. They're not going to do it. Maybe one person, will say your name in 200 years. Maybe one person will be like, oh, that was so-and-so. And it doesn't matter. That's okay.
But this is where I challenge that. So I think in the big spectrum of things, yes, you're right. But when I think they're talking about legacy, it's about their family unit within their unit, right? So it's not about the world knowing them. It's about grandma's recipe that in our family, grandma is our queen. She's our Beyonce.
But you got to have a family to do that.
Yeah, you do have the family.
So if you don't have a family, again, you just making little people.
Ooh. So a family is not created unless you're married.
No.
Okay.
No. Again, I think we're talking about two different people here. Okay. I'm talking about the person who's just out here populating the earth.
Okay.
Right. Not raising, not putting together a legacy. Like just because you've made a person doesn't mean that you have a legacy.
You're talking about future.
Why you keep putting names on people?
Do you know people in real life?
Do you think I don't?
Let me stop saying names.
Also, it's not about celebrities. There's so many non-celebrities that do this.
This is true. Okay, you're right.
And I have this conversation with men a lot because for whatever reason, I look like a breeder, and people will argue with me about having kids.
Oh yeah, no, you would be a wonderful woman for a man to have kids with.
No, I would be a terrible person to have
Well,
kids
you don't
with.
want the point I'm making is I understand why a man would want to get you pregnant.
I don't.
Why? Okay, let me break it down. First of all, you're
What? No. Once initially, sure, right? The process seems fun. There's other perks.
No, but
like once I've said,
yes,
I don't want children, there couldn't be anything less appealing about me if you are someone who wants children.
No, absolutely. Right. But
however, there's many follow-ups.
Right. Absolutely. But I'm saying the reason of the whys, first of all, to get Joy Taylor pregnant and to say,
all right, that's enough. So you get the idea.
Jesus Christ, bro. Oh my God.
You get the idea. So yeah, so there's Joy Taylor talking about procreating for legacy being silly. There's more in that interview clip, but it's like 4.5 minutes long. So, but you get the general idea there. So do you think there's something to what she said about, it being crazy to have children in order to carry on a legacy? She thinks the concept of legacy is just ridiculous.
I think Joy's definition of legacy is not that of the average everyday person. So Kendra G's she's a funny person to me. She's an interesting internet character. But one thing about her is like she's no dummy. So what she was saying, what Kendra G's rebuttal to that was like, look, I think you know, when people talk about legacy, they more or less talk about family, something immediate, Joy was all the way out there with 200 years from now, people knowing your name, like kind of legacy, what kind of circles of people you're hanging around, I guess it's some 70-year-old guy that has a plane. I guess her Joy's conversations that she's having with these types of people are speaking of legacy loosely, but whenever I heard of legacy, it was generally talked about more or less in line with what Kendra G was saying was like, just keeping the mojo alive. Not just creating humans, creating good humans to put in a pool of mess. Because I'm telling you, the mess will continue to happen. You got to populate the world with good people too. So, just leaving a good mark on the world. So I think Joy's a little off here. I think she's been exposed to too much of that lifestyle.
Sure.
Yeah, for her to be in touch with the average everyday person's idea of what legacy building would be. Now, granted, there's a spectrum to that definition because it's nothing in actual dictionary, but I think the average everyday person is more in line with just having a quality family and you being a part of keeping that quality alive. Now, when it comes to her saying that she doesn't want no kids, hey, listen, fellas, that's out there. Now, I know Joy Taylor has, the peanut butter skin. All right. And those village feeders that she just can't help but to show everybody. But just because she looks that way doesn't mean she wants to actually bear children. And if a woman tells you that she don't want kids, you better believe her.
Please believe her.
Yeah, you better believe her. It is not for the weak. The mother has to be enthused about this before the baby, before conception. She has to be enthused about it. And even then it's an uphill battle, I'm sure, for some people, because they don't even know how much responsibility it is to be a mom. So if there's a woman who's just completely out on being a mother, being a family woman, run for the hills. There's nothing there for you, unless you're actually in the business of not having any kids or whatever, then y'all can splack out. But any guy that's really trying to convince her, you guys are barking up the wrong tree. So yeah, I Joy is entitled to her opinion. I'm sorry she feels that way, but this world is pretty big, man. There's a lot of people out here that have their own opinions about things, and people are entitled to not want to have kids. And I'm just inclined to believe through life experience that, if somebody doesn't want a child, Don't try to force it on them, and especially if it's a woman. But what are your thoughts, man, on Joy Taylor saying that, hey, she's not into all of this legacy building stuff. She actually thinks it's quite stupid. What are your thoughts, bro?
I kind of hear where she's coming from. Then this will probably be one of the rare instances in which I will side with her. I think her experiences are what informs her on this particular concept. Because so I've been watching Joy Taylor going all the way back to when she was like the moderator on Undisputed. So years, there's been like over, I don't know how long, but however long, like 2016, 17-ish, somewhere around there. And she, whenever prompted, has openly talked about her aversion to having children and being a mom. She's been open about the fact that that's not a part of, that's not in her timeline. Like that's not for her. She has no interest in having children. And yet, despite her being open about that, I would imagine there's still a lot of guys who have tried to pursue a long-term commitment with her. And I would imagine a lot of those guys fancy themselves family men who at some point want to be a father. And so I think where Joy Taylor is coming at it from is people's priorities are messed up. And it isn't I'm somewhat putting words into her mouth, but what I gather from what she's saying is when it comes to like creating families and rearing children, people have messed up priorities. And they will deprioritize being with the right person that is most suitable for cultivating the right kind of environment to raise a family in lieu of getting with somebody that you just want to sleep with, essentially. And I think her experiences therein have informed her on that, because I would imagine that she's met many dudes throughout her time as a single woman who have openly talked about wanting to have children and be a father, and yet she's openly talked about not wanting to be a mom or have children herself, and yet these guys have pursued her anyway. And so at that point, what does that mean in terms of the fabric of raising children in the right kind of environment? And so I think her overall point is the importance of having kids in the right kind of environment. And for her, paying lip service to the idea of doing it for the purposes of legacy, even though you're not prioritizing cultivating the right kind of environment, does a disservice towards the idea of having children in the first place. Yeah. So I kind of feel like that's the point she was trying to make, but she's coming at it from her own, Joy Taylor in the streets perspective, where, she's also kind of speaking at it from the prism of, I do whatever I want and no one's going to tell me what to do. And just because I'm a woman doesn't mean I'm going to be defined by motherhood and blah, 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 blah. So there's also a tint of neo-progressive women empowerment inherent in her comments too, that are somewhat muddying the waters. But I think at the end of the day, what she is talking about, generally speaking, is people not having the right priorities in place when it comes to having kids. Because I do agree, there are a lot of people out there who are dropping these kids who have no business having children, either because they are ill-equipped financially or morally or any of this other stuff. Emotionally, they're ill-equipped, or because they are otherwise just deprioritizing they're otherwise deprioritizing the right stuff and prioritizing the wrong stuff. So I kind of hear where she's coming from. And, I'm no Joy Taylor fan, but I do think the spirit of, not necessarily that, but I do think that at the end of the day, and you've heard me say this, I respect people who know who they are and they make it known. So what she has to say might not necessarily coincide with my sensibilities. But if she knows that she don't want to be a mom and she knows that she don't want to have no kids and she's making it known, I respect that. If you at the end of the day decide that you want to try to sign up for that, despite the fact that deep down inside your sensibilities are opposite of that, that's on you, not her. She's letting you know who she is.
Right.
So it's up to you to make the informed decision. And if you choose to opt into that equation, that's on you, not her. So from that standpoint, I kind of really don't see much fault in what she's saying, other than I kind of get the sense that there's a little bit of that. This is what it means to be a woman now. Uh, Ideology coming through subtly when she talks like that. But moreover, people are prioritizing the wrong stuff these days when it comes to having kids. To the people who care about legacy, but they're doing it in the right way, cultivating the right kind of environment because they have the right kind of priorities, there's no way in the world she's speaking to them. And if she is speaking to them, then she's completely out of pocket for talking like that. But to the lot of those out there who's just out here just having these kids willy nilly, like it's not really something that's important, or like it doesn't require a significant amount of planning and preparation and and meeting of the minds and talking things out and making sure everyone's on the same page. That stuff is important. And I do believe that a lot of that is being left at the wayside by people who are just kind of irresponsibly having children.
Yeah, you bring up a good point, and I think she's more or less talking. And I know it was closer to her own personal experiences, and I related it to her talking to these 70-year-old men that have a plane, which is part of the group. But your explanation also helps me get into the mindset of really where she was coming from, because she doesn't live the life of every average everyday guy or person. I mean, and she wouldn't be talking to an average everyday guy. So she's only talking to these dudes that feel like they're hot shots, that want to have a baby with Joy Taylor for that legacy.
Yeah.
Power couple, baby, and that weird stuff. That is stupid, actually. You are just making another person because there's no connection there. She doesn't feel anything for you, and it'll just be more PR stuff. That is weird. So from that perspective, yeah, but Joy needs to realize who she's talking to. It can come off a little. It's not in touch with reality. That's her reality, I guess, but that's not the reality of the majority of people. That's not the reality of the people that's watching the show, and it's not the reality of the people that support you. That's fans or whatever. That's a unique situation dealing with celebrities. So, Kendra G bringing up celebrities like Future, Cannon, for instance, that we're doing it for that, for the clout and other weird things. So, if you don't want to have a baby for clout, I understand that. That's completely understandable. But say clout. I guess that would have been easier for me to understand. But using a word like legacy or whatever, people do want to have a legacy for their own personal reasons. There's a bit of selfishness in there. But part of being alive, man, is being selfish to a degree. Self-preservation, that's what people do, man. That's put hand on stove hot, remove hand. It's part of life to want to have self-preservation. And part of that self-preservation for some people is to have more of them replicated. Listen, I'm not here talking, all right, on a podcast in 2025. All right. If I didn't have people going on back in the day saying that they wanted to procreate like that, and I'm literally a living reflection of those people. I can go back in the 1500s, see my great or whatever, granddad or whatever, and he got this awkward little pinky toe that I got right now. You know what I'm saying? It's not like a regular, it's like a claw. I ain't got no scary feet, but the point I'm trying to make is I got that from somebody, and I got this way that I see the world and stuff, through stuff, man, through legacy. And so basically what I'm saying about that is that you are your legacy. And so for you to have a child in and of itself, inherent, there's a legacy thing going on there. Now, what do what are you going to instill in that child or whatever? That's another thing. But I'm saying is that you are your ancestors, and your ancestors are you. And if you don't want to keep that line going for whatever reason, you're more than entitled to do so. But I think it's a part of self-preservation, a part of the whatever is going on down here, is that people want to they want to keep the replication process alive. So some people don't want that, and that's fine. But for the people that's out there that want to do that and have their legacy continue and whatever, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that it's a normal thing. So for her to call it stupid, but because of her narrow worldview, I think is, it can come off as dangerous rhetorics.
Yeah.
So, but I hear your point, but this is not, this isn't an everybody thing. This is more or less Joy Taylor's a TV baddie, and she's encountering other quote unquote high level men. Right. And they want to, cross pollinate for clout. And that is weird. So if that's where Joy's coming from, I agree with that. But the standard everyday stuff that everybody else has to deal with, the vast majority of the world's population, they just want to keep that gift alive of having somebody else being able to enjoy life. If you want to call that what we're doing right now is enjoying.
Maybe, well, she doesn't really have to concern herself with the responsibility of carrying on her family legacy because she has siblings with children and she has nieces and nephews. That's so true. She's kind of relieved of duty from that standpoint. And then, so it kind of makes maintaining this kind of mentality easier when you don't shoulder some of the responsibility for carrying it, for carrying along the bloodline. Mm-hmm. Also, her coming from a sports background, I wonder if some of this is semantic sensitivity. Like, I wonder if she just has a strong aversion to the word legacy because, legacy has become an overused, exhausted word. Yeah. Especially within a sports context. Every time somebody does something, it's always like, what does this mean for this person's legacy? The word itself has become overused. It's ridiculous. Agreed. And so maybe I wonder if throughout that conversation, if you replace the word legacy with tradition, if she would have said the same thing. Because I'm wondering if maybe she just has an issue with that word. Because because how these days people do take issue with words. And so I don't know, maybe she feels some type of way about the word legacy because of how overwrought and overused it is. Because at the end of the day, there's nothing wrong with a person desiring to maintain a certain modicum of tradition. And the only way that you can keep that going is by creating future generations. If you don't create future generations, then it just dies. It just stops. So that to me is reasonable. But where I will side with her is, in my opinion, there are a lot of people these days. There's a lot of people out here. People in general need to stop having children. And that's not on no Darwinism, population control. Yeah, like that. People need to stop having kids out here, and that's not on some Darwinism, population control stuff. That's on some way too many people in society are engaging in sexual irresponsibility. And the result of this sexual irresponsibility is children being reared in weird, compromised environments.
Yes.
Where they grow up and they become unproductive contributors to society.
Yes.
So a lot of people with the wrong head on their shoulders and the wrong priorities do need to stop having kids. And I would imagine you do have some of these people who have the wrong priorities will talk about wanting to drop more jits for legacy purposes. And those people are doing the concept of legacy a strong disservice. I remember the last thing I'll say, I remember when I used to live in Tallahassee before I moved back home, the barbershop that I went to, there was a receptionist that used to work at the front desk at the barbershop. And she was, an around the way girl. And she would openly talk about she openly talked about how many different baby daddies she was going to have.
She was going to have.
She anticipated, like, you would have to have been there to hear her talk. But I'm trying to sum it up as best I can. But basically, she would, in casual conversations, talk in such a way in which she was anticipating having multiple children by multiple guys. It was an anticipation that she had.
Yikes.
And so my thing is, like, hearing her speak like this so casually, she kind of knew before she even had her first child what was set before her, being a multiple baby mama. And I would imagine she comes from an environment in which that was around her, multiple women who were multiple baby mamas. And so that's the kind of thing that needs to stop. And so from that standpoint, it is very counterproductive to have children under those circumstances, under the pretense that you're doing it for legacy and doing it to carry on whatever it is that you intend to carry on, because these kids need to be reared in the right kind of cultivated environments. So from that standpoint, I hear where she's coming from. Legacy is something that doesn't need to be factored into the equation when you're talking about one's motivation for having children. If that's what you're out here doing, is willfully engaging in this glorified sexual irresponsibility.
Yeah, that's fair, man. I think what needs to happen is that, which we're not going to get, but we really need like a definite, like a dictionary for all of these online terms that are being used, because yeah, man, things can get a little convoluted. Because is she talking about regular legacy? Is she talking about some weird stuff that she's encountered with her celebrity friends? Like who the hell knows? But I would say this: I don't walk around talking legacy. Like I don't use those terms. I mean, me personally, I don't go, yeah, this is for my legacy. Yeah, whatever with that, man.
I really think that she was triggered by that word because of her profession. I think because even in sports, that word is so overused, and so I think I'm guessing that I'm guessing that she has an aversion to, the implementation of that word, because it is an overuse. People are using that word way too much nowadays.
And that's why in her example, she was going off on that tangent talking about some people gonna know your name. Like, that's not why the average everyday person is doing it. That's part of the conversations that you having with your little celebrity friends, where they are whatever. And that's not important, actually. It's a drop in the bucket, like, in the grand scheme of things. But, like I started off with, man, I think the best way of putting it is just putting good people in the world, and being responsible for putting good people in the world and good energy in the world. Because there's people out here that should not be having kids, as you mentioned. And unfortunately, a lot of those offspring are going to end up, like you said, not being productive to society, which means is that society, for the most part, if it's not being productive, is only going in the other direction. So for you to offset that, combat that by putting good vibes in the world, I think that's kind of important, personally. So now, granted, everybody's got their own worldviews, but yeah, man, I think that for the people that are capable, the people that do want to have kids for whatever reasons, and you do consider yourself a contributing member of society and you want to have a family, it doesn't hurt to put good people in the world.
It doesn't.
Oh. Yeah. So, but Joy is completely removed for whatever reason. She doesn't want that for whatever reasons, and believe her. And because I'm telling you, if she were to have a kid, it might end up being one of those people that's not contributing to society. Yeah. So the fact that she's self-aware and not wanting to do that, great. Save that for the people that actually want to actually make the world better.
I don't really think that she would even let it get to that point.
No, she would. She would use her women's rights.
That is correct. Yeah. That is correct. I feel very I feel very comfortable saying that she is a pro-choice advocate.
Yeah, pro-choice. She was pro-choice that was straight to the clinic. So
she may have, and who knows? She's probably done it already. So,
hey, man, it'd be like that, man. And by the way, fun fact, man, that baby never leaves if she did it. As soon as that baby DNA gets to rolling, that always stays in the mama, which I didn't know about. But so that baby's end up being a party anyway, even if you decide to exercise your woman's rights. So hey, who knows, Joy? But yeah, man, shout out to Joy Taylor, man. I'm a fan of the Taylor family, man, because Jason's over at my Hurricanes. He played for the Dolphins. Every time I take digs at Joy, I feel like I'm taking jabs at Jason, man. It ain't like that, Jason. You know what I'm saying? Your sister just be making news, bro.
Yeah. She is a friend of the channel, though. Can't take that away from her.
Yeah, go Canes, man. Go Dolphins.